What's up, Eagles Nation? I'm Steven. My co-host here to this side is Allie, and welcome to Gate City Sports Media Company. So tonight's topic, we've been kind of talking about this one back and forth. I know a lot of you all have been following these live streams on Saturday nights. You've been ready for this conversation for a while. This is the live stream show where we're going to break down and we're going to play a little game, and we want everyone to tune in and join in the game. Simply put, it's you got to cut 5, you got to keep 5, you got to sign 5. If you want a guide on how we're determining some of these things, if you look down below and look inside of the description, you will see that we have actually linked a little chart that Allie put together for this show. We spent a lot of time on it. Thank you so much for doing that, Allie. Say what's up, everybody. You go ahead and tell everybody what's going on.
So in terms of the chart that I prepared and kind of the game plan for today?
Sure.
So basically, we're very curious about free agents, and a lot of people, want to talk about a lot of guys, which is great. We definitely want to open that up. But in order to do that, we need a budget, and we need to figure out who we're going to keep and who we're going to cut. We kind of did a little bit of this last week, and in the chart that I provided, and Steve and I, spoke about this last week as well, there's some guys that we want to keep, and there's some guys that we are going to talk about cutting. And so we can talk about, general roster philosophies and stuff like that. I went ahead and I didn't change my mind from last week at all. I kept Boston Scott, Hassan Ridgeway, Greg Ward Jr., Alex Singleton, and Jordan Howard. And looking at some of these other people, so a lot of these contracts are expiring contracts. The 5 that expired from last week: Derek Barnett, Rodney McLeod, Anthony Harris, Ryan Kerrigan, Steven Nelson, etc. And the only questions that we could really kind of focus on is Brandon Brooks and Andre Dillard. And a lot of these deals, and you can see them from the chart, a lot of these deals are underwater deals. What that means is the dead money is more than the cap savings. So a lot of these guys you really don't want to get rid of unless you love dead money like Howie probably does. So Brandon Brooks gives you a lot of room. We should certainly talk about him. I'm not an Andre Dillard fan, and I want to talk about that contract. I might be misunderstanding it based on my research, but he's not a swing tackle. He's not a starting tackle, and I'd rather have $37 million in cap space than 24. But I want to be able to keep those 3 first-round picks. So some people need to be cut. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be very careful of the contract structure of who you cut. And that, I guess we can start that being first. The first thing first, everybody, is where do you make the moves? If you're playing a game of 5, 5, and 5, and mind you, in real life, you may or may not do this, but every organization kind of has these hypothetical situations at hand. And that's what we're trying to emulate, is the hypothetical situation as it plays out. The 2 that came to my mind right away, because I know that there's things that we can do to manipulate the contract to get them freed up, is Andre Dillard. Definitely is at the top of that. And the reason I said Andre Dillard is, and I'll break down the contract, guys, as according to Over the Cap. So if you go to Andre Dillard's contract in 2022, guys, he's scheduled to make $2.182 million. He's got a prorated bonus of $1.754 million. Basically, that base salary is guaranteed. So his cap number is $3.9 million. So just short of $4 million, right? Because he's got a $2.1 million guaranteed contract, basically that contract is for the most part, it's guaranteed because you got the prorated bonus that you got to pay back to the league if you cut him, and you guaranteed his base contract.
Right.
The issue that I hear what you're saying here is that it doesn't matter really how you shake it unless you're going to do, I can see look at a post June 1st cut. Like no matter what you do, you're eating the contract. You're going to eat the contract. So if you're moving on from Andre Dillard, it's to gain something in return. It's not a cap savings measure.
A trade would be the best course.
I agree.
Post 6-1, pre 6-1, I'm not sure how that works financially.
Yeah, we would be nuts just to cut him outright. That would be a crazy move. Now, I think where things get more complex is when we look at a guy like Brandon Brooks' contract, because Brandon Brooks has a little bit more leadway to get away with some things. You're going to pay a lot of dead money. This is what happens when you kick the can down the road on contracts. I'm not saying that Howie did the wrong thing. We're doing some of these things. I'm just saying that when there's always a cost evaluation of things, right? So no matter what you do, there's an opportunity cost, right? Something is gained, something is given up. When we look at 22's base salary, he's got a $13.4 million base salary. He's got $5.9 million in a prorated bonus. He doesn't, so far, he's not scheduled for a roster bonus. Sometimes that changes as you get closer to a trigger date in a contract.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a $100,000 workout bonus. And in total, his cap figure is $19.4 million. He's one of the highest paid players scheduled on any 2022's cap.
Right.
The dead money on his contract is $15.7 million. So you would walk away with an outright cut of about a $3.7 million savings, but you're eating a ton of dead money for, $3.7 million in savings. I think where it gets interesting is if you're trading him, post June 1st. You might cut somebody like this, but if you cut or trading post June 1st, you're talking about a $13.5 million savings against this year's cap.
Right.
And I think that's a good place to start the conversation is that if you go to Over the Cap, or if you go to SpoTrack and you look at your cap tables, we got to understand how they're calculating those numbers. So you might see something that says like $13 million worth of cap space and say like, oh man, we got $14 million worth of cap space. Unfortunately, they're not really factoring in the draft, the draft pool, the rookie pool for the contracts for our draft picks. So you got to really subtract that from that number. But then the other side of things is we have to account for these moves we're talking about tonight and how you can reshape, reconfigure the roster in order to gain, additional cap space. One of those moves is a post June 1st designation on Brandon Brooks is $13.5 million towards the 2022 cap again, which is a significant savings. So even if you're only walking away with say like $6-7 million at the end of the day, after you sign it, after you got to factor in your rookies, you're also gaining back 13 million. So, now you're back up to like 20 some million of cap flexibility. So right. I think, these are just my estimates. Feel free guys to go check it out on your own. But my estimates is once you factor in the rookie draft pool and then you put back some money because of the roll of 51, don't worry. I know this stuff is a lot of language, guys. Just know that you got to factor in how much money your rookies get paid for when you draft them. And then you have to subtract the league minimum because you were going to pay 51 guys anyways. So it's kind of how it works. So all said and done, do you feel good saying that we will probably most likely have $20 to $25 million in cap space?
That would be a good estimate. Yes.
That's where I think we'll be at, somewhere safely. I'm not saying they won't have more than that. I'm just saying a safe estimate, guys, is $20 to $25 million worth of cap space. So step number one for me, Brandon Brooks probably is either going to be traded or let go outright in terms of a post June 1st designation. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I agree with that. So his dead money is 400% of his cap savings, over 400%, which is a lot. It's not as much as some players, but it's a lot. But he's hardly played at all in the past, little bit. He's almost elite when he plays, but he doesn't play very much. And I think that the Eagles want to take a good look at the free agents. And when you're down to $12 million or less in the cap, you have very few options to talk about. So I think I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but more likely than not, yes. I do believe Brandon Brooks is going to get a post June 1st trade or cut designation.
I tend to agree with everything you're saying there, that yes, those are the exact reasons why it's going to probably happen. And mind you, I don't work for the organization. For some of you guys, just remember all this stuff that we're kind of talking about, there is links down below. So that way you can follow along with what we're saying. I'll also try to pull this up on the screen so that way you guys can see. Right now I'm underneath the actual free agents that we're going to talk about in a minute, but I just want to come up here to the actual tables that Ali put together, and you can see an overview of what we're saying here, which is Brandon Brooks, his contract, what it's going to cost you, what you would keep if you kept him. So, $3.7 million you would get just by an outright cut. They're more than likely going to try to bank on getting the $13 million back by June 1st, designating that player. So chat, this is what we'll ask you right now. So now that you guys are in the chat and you guys are talking with us, first player, when you look over the Eagles roster, who's the first player you think is getting cut during the offseason? And it could be a cut, or you could reshape this to say they're just not going to be re-signed. I would accept either answer, but we really want to kind of home in on the cuts if we can. So let us know in the chat who you guys who's getting the axe if you're the GM. Who you axing? I think it's a really good place to start. So I gave mine Ali, is your first one Brandon Brooks as well?
I would say so. Yeah. So going back to your question, cut or non-renewed, I would non-renew those 5 that we talked about last week, and then my cuts or trades would be Dillard and Brooks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we got. First off, let me just say hello to everybody in the chat because I kind of forgot y'all. I apologize, everybody. Stephen Joyce, what's up, man? Appreciate you, buddy. Big Moose, what's going on? Little Jerry, what's good, my bro? Literally my brother, my older brother. Ben Adams, how you doing, man? Truancy, what's good? Romy one more, what's going on, buddy? Henry, how you doing, sir? BLSG, man, good to see you back again. How's everybody doing? Natiro, what's up, man? Geraldo, how you doing, buddy? Jazz Fusion, what's good? And then we got Paul in the chat as well. Thank you all for all tuning in. We appreciate y'all so much. Eagles have approximately, Paul's saying he's approximating about 33 million of cap space once you kind of factor in the moves he's thinking are going to happen. I will say, what's up, Market Spikes? How you doing, buddy? Let's see what some of the chat says here. So we got Jazz Fusion says, done deal, Brandon Brooks. He's cutting him. He's a done deal. Don't even need to discuss it no more. We got him on board. Marquette said, sense. Brandon Brooks. Romy one more says, it's Brandon Brooks. Right? Geraldo says, Brandon Brooks. Ooh, Jazz Fusion comes in with number 2, the number 2 player. So this is more of a would not re-sign, which is Derek Barnett. I'm going to get into my second guy because I think you and I both have the second person, Ali.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure this person's probably on both our lists. This gives us absolutely no savings, but it could potentially land us draft capital.
Okay.
And it's not that I would be upset if this player is not moved. I would still welcome him in Philadelphia with open arms.
Sure.
With that said, I think that there are times when you need to move off of players, and I think this is one of those times where you move off of a player.
Right.
And the value is, unless there's some kind of an injury next year, you can trade, but I doubt that's going to happen. I think the value is for this player at this point. I'm probably going to trade Andre Dillard, and it is not for any cap savings because you're not getting anything. You're purely getting compensation back in return. I feel like at this point you probably could get, even though it's not going to cost you anything, it might even cost you more money depending on what you do in the subsequent moves. But I just think that you get draft capital back and you rebuild your roster. It's nothing personal against Andre Dillard. I still think there's a legit case you can make to say, no, you keep him because you're not saving anything. So what's the point? At least you got a backup left tackle. My thing is I'd rather have a guy that's more flexible that I know can play left and right tackle, and I know for a fact could bounce inside if I needed them to. I think we already got that guy on the roster personally. Mm-hmm. So I would move on from Andre Dillard, even though there's probably no cap savings coming from that move whatsoever. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would need for him to be traded, and like I said, or like you said, draft capital is the way to go, for sure.
Happy New Year, Drew. I appreciate that, buddy.
Like you said, he's not a starting tackle. He's not a swing tackle. He's a halfway decent left tackle, and thankfully the market is enough where we could get a pretty good deal. Hopefully, third or fourth round draft pick, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. So we're already up to our cut 5. Brandon Brooks, Andre Dillard. Both of them are kind of on our list of players to be cut. So we both have the same exact guys to start off with. This is where things might get more complicated because I don't think that the savings aspect to things is quite as clear cut anymore. And, this is where you might have guys where you make the argument, I'm just not going to bring them back necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's where you kind of get into some of these more complex arguments about how you're going to shape your roster. But I still think that if we can find, some kind of savings, we should take the opportunity to seek those out. And that's basically what I'm looking for. I'm looking for things over the cap. Is I want to find those savings when I go to the cap tables, and I want to see who is the guy that's making too much money, and is the avenue forward either a restructure, is it a cut? Like what is going to happen in guys' opinion to do things? And the easy mathematical formula you can do here, guys, is look at the base salary. You cannot restructure Fletcher Cox. You cannot restructure Brandon Graham, really. They just don't have any money to restructure. They're only making a little over $1 million in base salary. It's all tied up in prorated bonuses. The only other guy I have on here who has a high base salary is 2 players. It's Darius Slay and Javon Hargrave. I highly doubt either one of those guys is going to be cut or traded. That seems like a very unlikely scenario for me. So tell me if you don't like what I'm doing here, Allie, and I can change this up. But I'm going to suggest an alternative to cutting or trading a player or not re-signing a player. I'm going to say that Darius Slay is my third guy, and it's a restructure of the contract.
Okay, so you got me worried when I heard Darius Slay because he's an all-pro. I mean, he's the reason that we're eligible for the playoffs. The reason is a bit strong, but he's the only great player on our defense. But if it's a restructure and not a cut or a trade, I could be open to that.
I would restructure because he's got $16 million worth of base salary. Make no mistake about it, guys. What I am proposing is kicking the money down further on his contract, but I don't think you need to kick that much money down to gain extra cap savings. I just think you take $4 or $5 million, you convert it into some form of signing bonus money, you give it to the player, and now you got another $4 or $5 million worth of additional payment that you can divide up, prorated over however many years you want to prorate it over. It's not going to cost you that much money. You know, it's going to take maybe $1 million or so. If you spread it out over 4 years, it's going to cost you $1 million, maybe a little more, depending on exactly how much money you take off the contract. To me, I'm restructuring. I'm going to restructure Darius Slay's contract. That would be my third move. What would be your third move, Allie? I'm curious.
I'm taking a look at the list right now. So it could be cut or restructured or traded. I just want to be clear on that.
Sure. I'm making the rules up as I go, Allie.
No, I just want to make sure we're both on the same page. Mm-hmm. So there are some things that I look at. I look at the dead money numbers, like Javon Hargrave, 1,605% dead money. There's no way in hell I'm going to touch that. Plus, he's a good player. And so that's a number I look at. I'm kind of obsessed with dead money in the way that Howie isn't. Like Howie loves dead money. I hate it. So it's not necessarily going to save us a bunch of money, but I would like to take a look near the bottom of the roster and see about some of these guys. So Brett Toth is probably below the first 52. LaRaven Clark, who the hell knows? I like Kerry Vincent. He's versatile. Reed Sinnett, 825, 0% dead money. He's easily replaceable. Gowan, Jackson, Lovato, Sipas, Johnson, Jackson, Opeta. Okay, so I'm not being completely serious, but I want to get your opinion on this player. Josiah Scott. It's only $895,000. It's not even $1 million. 0% cap hit. He is 5'9" and wants to play on the outside. Is he any good? Real legit question. I'm not trying to be a jerk.
Ooh, that's a loaded question, Allie. That is loaded. I think he's a short zone, and I'm not making fun of his height. I think he's a short zone player stylistically. Meaning, guys, he's good from 10 yards up to the line of scrimmage, and he's very sticky in coverage in that particular realm. And if you put him in a zone system where he can really play off his eyes and his eye discipline, he can steal a football. With that said, I don't even think he's played 50 snaps on the season. You got 99 quarterbacks. I don't know if that's necessarily the guy I would necessarily pull from, but it also depends upon the versatility to play special teams, things like that. I think I could live with that. I think if that was who your third guy, I think I could live with it. Because I really don't have anyone else or I can just say like, well, just sub this. You know what I mean? Just remove this guy then. You know what I mean? I could see it. It's not saving a ton of money, but
if we're cutting or re-whatevering 5 people, I did want to take a look at the bottom of the roster because that's what execs do. They also look at the bottom of the roster. And it's like, okay, who isn't adding a ton of this team? We can get rid of basically for free and can save us a little bit of money. And I think I'm not sure about Josiah Scott on special teams. We do run his own system. Would you say he's more of a box safety? Not that he's necessarily a safety. I mean, he's very small in all dimensions, not to make fun of him, but he's a compact dude.
He's very similar to a couple of players, to be quite honest.
Sure.
I would say that he has some ability to play outside, but there's clearly limitations because he's not the tallest guy. I mean, he's just not. He's not the tallest guy. If you got a DK Metcalf out there, I don't think he has – I think he's very athletic, but he's not the same type of athlete as an Avonte Maddox where at least you have somewhat of a pretty good vertical on a guy, and a guy that's just really good at timing the jump. And
Mhm.
although, like, you throw that ball 20 times, 15 times, you know what I'm saying? He's going to lose. There's those 5 times where you at least have an opportunity. You know what I mean?
Right.
For a win on those kind of balls. I don't know that you have that same prospect if we're talking about playing Josiah Scott on the outside like that. He's more so if he reads the quarterback and the quarterback tries to hit a hitch route to a bigger receiver, I think his anticipation is next level and he can steal the football. I think that's
No.
more so his strength, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But man, it's tough to say, like, because they traded for him, but they've also traded for all these other guys. I don't really know who the front office likes more than the other. I don't know who the coaching staff likes more than other. And by the way, are we even 100% certain that there's not going to be something that happens like Zimmer gets fired from Minnesota and Jonathan Gannon, who shouldn't be a head coach yet, although he's up on high on list, maybe Minnesota takes him a couple of years too early because sometimes you got to be early to get him. But the thing
Yeah.
is like, okay, I look at a guy like Jair Alexander. I look at Avante Maddox. These guys that can play inside, outside. I don't quite think Josiah Scott's to that level, to answer your
Right.
question.
Sure. No, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. So we're up to 3. I'm going to go 4. And I think this one will be kind of an easy one because it's going to be a restructure again. I'm definitely
Sure.
restructuring Javon Hargrave's contract. I'm going to
Okay.
restructure his contract to get additional savings, probably somewhere in the nature of trying to convert another, 4 or 5 million. I'm just making up numbers out of my head, guys. I have no clue what Howie would actually do. I'm just saying that's a very feasible number to make on Javon Hargrave's contract to easily move $4 or $5 million worth of base salary into some kind of a prorated bonus. So that way you can take the $4 or $5 million and split it up over X amount of years to get that money back. So far on my list, this is what I had. I have Brandon Brooks being traded probably post June 1st or cut if need be. I have Andre Dillard being a trade. I absolutely don't think that they would actually cut him. I think it's absolutely a trade if it happens. I have Darius Slay restructuring $4 to $5 million worth of his $16 million base salary into a signing bonus to create more cap space. And then Javon Hargrave is still to make $12.7 million on base. I have him converting about $4 or $5 million of that base into a prorated bonus, giving us $4 or $5 million extra of cap flexibility. So those are my 4 right now. What's your thoughts on Javon Hargrave and asking him to move money?
I think it's great. I think of all the restructures, probably, and I'm looking at less data than you are right now. I'm just looking at the chart. 1,605% dead money is not good. If you're going to restructure anybody, if you could only restructure one contract on here, based on the information I'm seeing, it'd be that one for sure. So I definitely agree with that move. And Slay is a guy, to go back to Slay for a minute. If you're going to do that, if you're going to kick the can down the road, I don't like doing it. But if you're going to do it for Darius Slay. Don't do it for the extra cap space. Because that's fungible. Money can come from anywhere. But do it for Slay, big play Slay, absolutely. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of you guys are chiming in the chat. I'm going to get to your questions. Stick with us. We just want to get through these 5 cuts, and we're going to read all your comments about everything, okay? Some of you guys are asking me about what we could get for Brandon Brooks. Probably not a whole lot through the trade market just because of the nature of the injuries, although he's such a good player. You're just probably not going to get anything outside of maybe a day 3 pick for Brandon Brooks at this point. Andre Dillard, ironically, might actually return you an early day 3 or a late day 2. Somewhere between the 3rd and 4th round, I would say, for an Andre Dillard, maybe. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm making these numbers up. It's just my perceived value of the players. I don't know. I have no clue what other front offices think or how they would do it, but I would think that Brandon Brooks' value has been very much devalued because of the injuries and the fact he hasn't been on the field recently. So that's where I would stand there. But I'll ask you, who's your 4th player?
So using my strategy of people that aren't going to cost us a lot of dead money, I'm looking at the list again. And Osman going. So this is a question. This is not necessarily my person. I just want to ask. Rick Lovato, is he off the team as a technicality?
No. So what happened with Rick Lovato was someone brought this up. I think it might have been Paul or somebody brought it up in the last live stream, and they were correct. There was a moment in time where we cut him to get somebody through, but we cut a deal to tell him, like, you're coming right back. We got to do something fancy with the roster to get some stuff settled through. But because we cut him, we incurred some of the dead money from the cut. So even though we
Gotcha.
brought him back, we saw to eat the dead money from that initial cut we made. So he's still, he'll be back. I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Let's see. So one guy that I know you don't like very much, basically the guys at the top are getting paid too much money, but they're good enough to be able to afford the dead money. The guys on the bottom are people that could be good. We've got them on semi of a deal, but we don't know if they're good or not. So there's one guy that I know you don't like that I might want to make my one of mine. Just need to make sure I can find him. Marlon Tuipulotu. Well, what are your thoughts on him? Are you done with him? It'll save us, 700,000 or so.
Oh man, I wasn't done with him until Jalen talked about him. Sorry, you guys weren't privy to this conversation. We had the members only chat, and Jalen, myself, and a few others in the chat. David Barry, there was a few of us in the chat. We were talking about Marlon Tuipulotu. And Jalen said that, the thing that bothered him about his college film is he really, for a guy that had some pretty impressive hand fighting from time to time, he also saw just as many cases of him whiffing at air and not making any contact. And also he thought he was a little flawed technically from engaging his hips to actually hold up and be able to anchor. So I really liked his college film, although I was definitely suspicious of the fact that it was against the Pac-12, which is just not, you got to be a little suspicious of linemen in that conference. I don't know what you do at nose tackle unless you're going to bring back Hassan Ridgeway and sign him. If you make that move, then it probably means you're either drafting a younger nose to develop. So you're really putting pressure on yourself to find that guy, or you got to bring Hassan Ridgeway back.
Yeah, I will. So just in terms of my cuts and my retentions, I am bringing Ridgeway back. I've seen him really pop on tape, and I haven't seen. I mean, Tuipulotu may not have a lot of snaps, but based on what you're telling me right now, I'm not. I'm willing to take the risk.
I can understand that. Look, like I said, I don't think we're ever going to agree 100% on every single move. That's why they don't have. It doesn't even happen in front offices. Nobody's agreeing on every single move. There's just no doubt about that one. I'll give you my fifth guy, and this is a trade. I don't know that it's going to really save us any money at all because it might be guaranteed his contract. Let me take a look real quick. So, yeah, no, we're not really going to incur any dead money at least. So that's a good thing. So I guess we would save about $1 million, a little short of $1 million. But here's the thing. I don't know how the Eagles view this player, and I'm taking a chance here because they may view this guy as the future center. He might be the future center when Kelsey steps down. And if that's the case, they're certainly not going to trade him. But if we're sitting here with a log jam at guard, then it just depends on how you view him. Is he going to be your top, guard off the bench? So Jack Driscoll will be your right guard. Leonard Dixon's your left guard. Sua Peta is your first guard off the bench, guard center combination. Then you got Herbig if you bring him back because he's technically a free agent. He would be the next guy. You know what I mean? I'm going to say that this front office loves to draft offensive linemen. This front office loves versatility. I don't think Sua Peta, this is why he's my fifth guy because I don't think this is a layup. And I'm not even really sold that it's going to happen. Sure. But we're playing the game of five. I know that Sua Peta will have interest around the league. People will want him. You will probably get a decent return for Sua Peta. Someone's going to pay you for a Peta, in my opinion.
For sure.
They're gonna give you decent draft value for him. That's probably where I'm going.
Yeah, no, I like that. I was thinking about Sue as well. That's cool. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
See, in terms of my fifth, just taking a look at the list again. Okay, so this is
hard, isn't it? It's really hard to make some of these decisions.
It is. I've made mine. I think the biggest thing, so we're evaluating possible trade markets for people, especially for you since, and by the way, trading is good. Trading is almost always better than just cutting people. But the people that I would potentially cut, obviously if we can get a good trade deal for these people, let's do it. But assuming that we can't, I just have question marks on people. And my last question mark really on this roster, I actually like our roster. I really do. I think we've got some good players, some good talent, some good leadership that I like. Kayvon Wallace. I mean, I looked at my scouting report on him. It's nothing but question marks. Am I missing something? Am I just not good at the film? Like, what's his deal? Why am I wrong about Kayvon Wallace?
I can't say that anyone is right or wrong about Kayvon Wallace because he hasn't been on the field enough to prove anyone right nor wrong. I thought that he was not nearly as athletic as people thought, judging his Clemson film, but I thought he had very good instincts playing at Clemson. I thought he was pretty good. I was very amenable to the way that I thought he was playing there. And I thought that this is a guy that you probably could play as a box safety in the NFL. He's kind of tough enough to do it. He's probably not the greatest sideline to sideline guy, so I'm not too sure you want him roving as a free, although they did play him as a free his rookie year mostly. So, you never really know, I guess, kind of the point of that one. I will say that I don't hate that one. I think that's a fair pick.
Sure.
But I don't know, man. You might be right. They might be ready to move on from him, but I just think that they have so many issues at safety. If you move Kayvon Wallace, you're probably signing somebody back or you're spending in free agency.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the problem is our secondary has all the instincts in the world, but no athleticism. You got to have a mix of the two. And so Harris is basically a box safety. Wallace is basically a box safety. Josiah Scott is a box player. Got a bunch of slow people in a league that likes to throw the ball in a scheme that likes to play two high safeties, where one of them buzzes down into a cover 3 look on occasion, if not frequently. The scheme does not fit the personnel. We do not have the personnel to run that scheme, which we'll talk about in a minute or two.
Sure. Okay. I think we're both at 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to name mine and I'm going to read the comments. I'm going to name because you named the 5 players you would bring back, right? You've already named your 5 you're bringing back.
Bringing back. Yes, I have.
All right. So I'll say mine because I think I've changed one position grouping here because you guys have convinced me in the comment section the last time we had the live stream that you might actually be correct on something. Although I don't love the options and I'm a little up in the air here. Alex Singleton, Hassan Ridgeway, Jordan Howard, Nate Herbig, I'm probably bringing back. Here's where I get into the 5th guy, trying to identify who I'm bringing back as the 5th guy and where you spend your money, how much that kind of stuff matters in terms of spending your money. And, it's not an easy decision, to be quite honest. So I'm going to tell you the 2 that are crossing my mind now is potential bring back guys. We don't have a ton of safety depth. I'm concerned about us getting the right safety in the draft and if you're going to be able to identify that guy. But here's my problem. Rodney McLeod, although I think he's been getting better and better each week coming back off that knee injury, he's 32 years old next year. He'll be 32, I believe. We walked away already from one safety in his 30s. Now, the money could be the main factor why we moved away. So I am going to leave that open to maybe that was a money issue more than it was the age issue. So I would probably bring back Rodney McLeod at this point, but Anthony Harris is 31 as well. I think Anthony Harris is the lesser of the 3 safeties between Marcus Epps, Rodney McLeod, and himself. I think he's the 3rd guy at this point. Although I think Anthony Harris he's decent. I would be okay if he came back, although I would definitely want a young guy or, I'd want some kind of answer coming in the future because, he's just okay. The other guy is Steven Nelson, who I had originally on the roster because he'll only be 29 next year. I said only 29, but at least he's not quite 30 yet. So you could probably get another year or 2 out of him before, you know what I mean? And he's average. He's an average cornerback. I think you guys are making me move off of Steven Nelson because I feel like I can get a cornerback in the draft. I'm not sure I can get a safety in the draft.
Agreed.
So I might actually be moving off of Steven Nelson and then going to Rodney McLeod.
That makes sense.
With the me admitting that I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles didn't opt for McLeod and instead went for Anthony Harris, although I still think McLeod's a better player. But
for sure.
Who knows? So Paul said Eagles have $18 million of cap space from 2021 to roll over to the current $14 million they have for 2022. No, Paul, they don't. So that $14 million is already accounting for the $18 million rollover. That's what they don't tell you on Over the Cap. But if you go to Spotrac, they show you that. They show you all the math behind that. So they actually don't have $18 million to roll over. That $18 million rollover is being factored into the $14 million. Spotrac gives you a really good breakdown if you go to their cap tables and look at it. You can see exactly how they're factoring in that money. It confused me a few times too, Paul. He said trading Dillard and Brooks or release will free up some money. Definitely for Brooks, it will. T. Lewis Bergang said Jannard Avery. So I'm taking it he would not sign back Jannard Avery. He would. I'm not too sure which one that was. Spike23 said, "What's up, Gate? Appreciate you, buddy." He said, "Stuck in Atlanta until tomorrow morning. Headed back home to Houston. Thanks for posting Eagles business." Hey, no problem, Spike. I appreciate you tuning in. Safe travels, too. Romy One More said, "I would trade Dillard to the Steelers or the Panthers for draft capital." Good name drops in terms of the teams. Yeah, that's not bad ones to bring up. Trade Dillard along with a 5th rounder to get a 3rd rounder from an offensive tackle needy team. Seahawks, Jags, Panthers, Rams, a lot of other teams. Yeah, Paul, I think you're onto something with that one. I think that one makes some sense. We will be hot if either of those guys go. I think he's referring to Darius Slay or Javon Hargrave being cut as opposed to like restructured. They're not going to get cut. It would purely be a restructure.
Right.
We just don't have the ability to take on some of these dead money hits. Jazz said Kelsey would need to restructure to return, correct? Not necessarily, because Kelsey already restructured. I don't even know how much is on. Let me take a look real quick, guys, and I can tell you exactly how much is on Kelsey's contract in terms, because, in order to restructure, you need to have base salary, and that base salary has to be great enough to give you some flexibility in terms of the league minimum, right? Because the guy has to at least earn the league minimum in the base. So that's kind of the problem you deal with these guys. So he's got a $1.5 million base salary, so you probably can't restructure him, unfortunately, for 2022. But I would probably still keep him around if he's willing to play. That's for sure. Eagles could actually extend both Hargrave and Slay 2 years. Yeah, that's probably what I would do as well, because you're not trying to move that much money to create that much cap space, Paul. So that's probably what I would do, to be honest. Barnett is not under contract after this year. Do no savings when he leaves in free agency. Yeah, no, there's no savings. You're not saving anything, but we're still paying dead money towards him because, we had him restructure the contract. So we converted some of that $10 million in base into a signing bonus and then prorated it because I don't know. Really don't have a lot. I guess we went at cap space for 2022, so we could roll some of that money like you referred to earlier. Jalen said, "I think Howie has infected you, Gate. Let Slay play his contract out and draft his replacement. If our team is in a contender status, resign him to short-term deal. If not, trade him or let him go." I still look at those as you have to bring in some people to compete. And if you really look at the contract structures, Jalen, we just don't have a lot of options. Like you could definitely let Brooks go, Brandon Brooks go and get some savings. But a lot of these other guys aren't giving you a whole lot. And I'm not saying by any means am I saying that these moves are going to happen between Slay and Hargrave. Jalen, I ultimately I don't know, but I know Howie. You know what I mean, Jalen? I know how Howie thinks. And I'm looking at those contracts and I'm saying, I bet you Howie messes with those contracts. Paul said Brandon Graham or Jason Kelsey contracts will be difficult to work out for. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because there's basically hardly any money left on the base contract at all. It's all pretty much in prorated bonuses. NFC East B says, "I think Kelsey retired this offseason. His interview when Lane was out signaled as much." NFC East Beast, I have no clue. I hope that's not true, but it's not like I have anything to refute it. Paul said Jay Scott is nothing more than a backup nickel slot cornerback and special teamer. Never understood his acquisition. I think they liked him in, like I said, the short zone area, Paul. But yeah, I mean, probably a player you could have kept or could have traded for or not traded for, and I don't think anyone would have cared either way. Paul said Josiah Scott is another Roby Coleman type, but not as experienced. He's not an outside defensive back. Jalen said, keep Scott. Going back and forth here. Depth for camp, see where he stacks up. If he is worthy of a spot, keep him. If he is in camp with more talented prospects, trade him if you can, or if not, just get rid of him, basically cut him. I see what you're saying. Keep them around, see where these guys stack up, and then try to make moves on guys that you think aren't going to ultimately make the roster, and then, move on from other guys. Ref Taco said, what could we get for Brooks? Late third rounder, man. Probably late third rounder. Or I'm sorry, late day 3 pick, not third rounder. Late day 3 pick. Third rounder would be a crazy value. We're not going to get that. Full support of trading Dillard. He wouldn't had his money moved last year. Javon Hargrave will actually have to get an extension, Steve, as 2022 will be his final year of his contract. No, he's from what I can see, Paul, what I can see from over the cap. When I look at 2023, let me see if I can't get it to load, Paul. When I look at 2023, well, no, you're right. He's on dead money. I will say this. He's on a prorated bonus. I will say this. To my understanding, I thought that was the same situation they found themselves in with Jason Kelce this year. And yet they reworked the contract. They extended them and then still pushed the money. So it would be what you're saying. It would be similar to like a Jason Kelce type deal, what they did with Kelce, although probably with a lot more money being moved. Jalen said, let Hargrave play that contract out because I have questions if he is a real true DT1. I mean, I definitely think he's the better defensive tackle on our team right now. And that's not taking shots at Fletch. It's just he's been way more productive. Paul said you can only restructure players that have multiple years left and not in their final year. Why would a player or agent agree to this? I disagree with some of the aspects technically about that. You can restructure a guy no matter what's on the contract. All you're doing is prorating and paying back the league. Players don't have any problem with restructuring, Paul, because players are actually getting money. So really what you're doing, if a player doesn't have guaranteed money on the contract, you're guaranteeing them X amount of money goes directly in their pocket. Because what you're doing is you're taking their base salary they may or may not have earned given performance, depending on how the contract is structured or injury, and you're basically guaranteeing it by putting it into a bonus, signing bonus, and handing it directly to them and then spreading out over years. So there's a lot of incentive for agents and for the player to actually do that model because they can still hit free agency if the only thing left on the contract is the prorated money. Because that has nothing to do with the player. It has to do with what you owe the league. So Paul said Brooks won't return any higher than fifth rounder. I agree. That's about what I would say his value is too. Brooks trade must contain pick and high potential pick that hasn't worked out. Andre Dillard, I'm assuming here, Jalen, or maybe Rager or somebody. Dillard better be prepared to play Week 18 if the Eagles clinch a playoff spot Sunday. He could get a bag somewhere if he balls out. I think teams are already interested in Dillard, to be quite honest. Look at this stuff. I thought I was smart for making a Jalen Hurts quarterback graph to figure out his uphill rise. Allie's very, very intelligent, if you haven't figured it out. Paul said, who is giving the Eagles a high draft pick in return for Brooks? Nobody is, man. Nobody's going to give them a higher one. Ref said he thinks that Kelce stepping down after this year. Michael Felder coming in with the $10 super chat, man. It didn't give me any comment, Michael, but I still appreciate it. If you have a comment, just post it, Michael, and I'll come back to it for you. Philly Fresh in the building. What's up, Fresh? How you doing, buddy? Good to see you here, man. All right, guys. So I'm going to get back to the topic a little bit. Sorry, I'll get to some of these comments again later, guys. Nothing personal. I just, want to keep the flow of everything going. So we're down to signing 5 players. How did you go about trying to figure out 5 players you wanted the Eagles to sign?
So I've got certain rules when it comes to building rosters, especially with free agents. First of all, I don't want to sign any free unless it's Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or one of those special kind of circumstances. I don't want to sign anyone over 30 or say anyone that's not under 30. I'm a big believer in building team cohesion and building culture, and that can be difficult to do when you got a bunch of older guys. It just is. And so I could have put 761 people on the list. I only put about 60, and all these guys are under the age of 30. That's rule number 1. And I try to focus on certain position groups. Really didn't do that. One of my big things is familiarity with scheme, familiarity with a coach, and familiarity with a team. again, it's about building culture. It's about building a knowledge base. And so the people that I really looked at were people that were in Minnesota, Indianapolis, the Chargers, and those are three of the main teams I know of in terms of where our coaches have been. And of course, I took a look at the prices as well. They're 2021 AAV. What does that stand for exactly? AAV.
I think it's average annual value.
Right. So the thing about free agency, it often becomes a bidding war, and you want to be very careful. So the prices we pay are probably going to be higher than these prices, but it gives a good baseline. So that's kind of I want them to be under 30. I want them to be a position of value, position of need, which for the most part, I did a pretty good job of, and which we'll get to them in a minute. And I want to hear what your 5 are. And I also really wanted to get people familiar with the coaches, familiar with the scheme, and familiar with the team.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I think it's very fair. I'll go first. Do you want me to go first with my
Yeah,
first?
please. Go for it.
I got 2 players, and this is how I worked it out because I can't predict who will or won't be available, but I tried to get the most impactful players I could get, I thought, given what I think the Eagles can afford.
Okay.
All right, there are certain guys on the list that I would love to have, and I'm not saying the Eagles won't come up with the money to get them. I don't see it at this exact moment. I might think differently by the time we hit February, guys.
Sure.
But I just didn't think Allen Robinson's, the 2021 average, value for him, what they've comped his contract to be worth, $17.8 million. I can't see us having that kind of cash. Godwin's 15.9. I can't see it. Fowler, 15 million. Devontae Adams, 14.5. Tyrann Mathieu, 14. Those dudes are all impact. There's no doubt about it. I just don't think we can afford it, to be quite honest. So here's where I went. I went with 2 players. We're only probably going to get one, in my opinion. But these are the 2 players I had. Position of need. If the Vikings allow Anthony Barr to go over $8 to $9 million, right? He's at 8.6 million where they got his valued out to. He's 29 years old. So I can understand people having some reservations about, look, man, you're going to get him for maybe, you're talking about Darius Slay's situation. You're getting him right before he's 30. And then within 3 years, but he's good. He knows the system. And I'll spend $8 to $9 million on Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr is on that list, number 1 for me. My alternative to Anthony Barr, if I can't get him, is we both allowed our young pass rusher to walk. You have to replace him. I know there's a lot of defensive linemen in this draft. And that's why I went Anthony Barr's 1A and this player's 1B to me.
Okay.
Ogbo. Emmanuel Ogbo would be my 1B. Pass rusher from Miami. So my 1A, 1B, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I like Anthony Barr a lot. He's one of the ones that I ended up choosing for myself. So I like that a lot. And like you said, it makes sense. He's in a position of need. Like you said, Jannard Avery, he's okay. He's flashed a little bit, but he's not a real Sam. He's not really doing his job. If you're looking for a Sam or a Leo, especially when that's very good with experience in the system, Anthony Barr's it. Like, he's almost 5 stars for me. He's pretty much a 4-star guy. So he's definitely my number 1. I'm curious about Ogba. I don't mind it. Just explain to me and explain to the chat. I mean, obviously it's a position of need. It's a position of value. Why Ogba in particular relative to, I mean, there aren't a lot of DEs on here. Jadeveon Clowney or
Jadeveon Clowney in particular worries me. I think Clowney is kind of a little overrated for what he does.
Okay.
I think Ogba is still a pretty good pass rusher for his age. It has a lot to do with the age grouping. I think he's got the size, being a 275, 280-pound defensive end to kind of play a Vinny Curry role, but be a better pass rusher than Vinny Curry was.
Okay.
The young man gets quarterback hits, so he's more than just a sack guy. He definitely knocks quarterbacks off their mark.
Nice.
And I'll be honest with you, I just think he's an outright upgrade over a guy that we already paid $10 million to this past year.
For sure.
And Derek Barnett. So you're telling me that Ogba, and I know these things are probably a little light in terms of the truth of the matter. If you're telling me that Ogba can be had for that price range, I'll take a guy that's trending upward currently. I mean, he's
For
never
sure.
been a double-digit sack guy, but the last 2 years he's been at 9 sacks. He's got an opportunity to get double digits. I shouldn't say that the 2021 season's not quite complete yet, but I like his production. 24 quarterback hits on 9 sacks. He's got 9 tackles for loss on the season. I think Agba would be, you get him in the right scheme, and I don't know exactly the scheme fit here in Philadelphia per se. It's a little projection because Miami's vastly different from Philadelphia and what we run defensively, but I just believe in the player.
Nice. I like that.
Mm-hmm. So who was your number one?
My number one was actually your 1A. My number one was Anthony Barr for this exact same reasons you said. Yeah.
So you're just really into the scheme fit aspect of things.
I mean, he's also a really good player. He's also a really good player at his position. Yes, scheme fit is important to me. You'll see that with all the 5 that I chose. Obviously, there are ones we can take a look at. Let me just go through real quick. I agree with you that anyone over 14 million is not worth looking at, as impactful as they may be. I'm looking at these receivers, and with the exception of one of mine, and my guy's 6'3", I think. I like that 6'5", 210 kid out of USC in the draft. We really do need an actual X receiver with actual X measurables. And, a lot of these receivers, as impactful as they may be, aren't that, right?
Sure.
And, I mean, there are other people here that I like, but yeah.
I will say for me, we probably should have started off by – my bad, guys. My bad, chat. We probably should have started off by talking about position of needs, where we perceive the position of needs to be. And I think it's a little loaded. You know what I mean? Like, I had 4 positions in particular I'm looking at. And it's 4 alignments, not positions. Sam linebacker, definitely. If I can upgrade it to Mike, I'll do it. X wide receiver, or just someone that can separate. But I would take an X wide receiver if I can get one. Someone that can separate would be very helpful. And I said we needed a safety. How did you lay out your position and needs?
Likely in a similar fashion, I agree. We need I really do want a big-bodied receiver. Here's the thing: we already have an X. We already have all this stuff. Devontae Smith is truly great. Micah Parsons might be a generational talent. He's certainly an impactful player. Mm-hmm. Devontae Smith goes up for the ball. Devontae Smith gets massive separation. So we definitely want to get more of those guys. I want to make it as easy as possible. I want to run the ball as much as possible, but when we need to throw or when we want to throw, I want it to be as easy for Hurts to throw the ball as possible. I gave, I think, last week the Cam Newton analogy of how they gave him a bunch of really long wingspan receivers to make it easier, to make it an easier process for him, and I think it worked in large part.
Sure.
And whether it's Drake London from USC or Mike Williams from the Chargers, I definitely see that as a position of need. And then I'd say as a depth piece, probably guard. I want to take a look at some guards. I want to talk about some guards. And then I'm trying to think defensively, defensive end, a Sam or a Leo, someone that's more of a hybrid for sure, which we already talked about. And then I don't consider inside linebacker to be a need. Obviously, if there's someone that just pops, I'll take a look. And then I want to go corner in the draft. Obviously, there's someone that pops. We'll take a look. In fact, we can talk about one guy for a minute. Kyle Fuller in Denver.
Sure.
He was Virginia Tech grad.
I believe so.
I prefer to pair rookies with vets. So I want to draft the guy across from Slay. Of course, next year we might be talking about drafting the guy across from him. So I'd want to consider someone like Fuller, for example. He's a little expensive at $10 million for 2021 AAV, but corner is almost a position of need, and I would definitely agree with you that safety most definitely is.
Yeah. And see, here's my concern is like when I get past certain guys, especially on the defensive line, I think it gets really concerning because I don't think there's as clear upgrades anymore. Because, I mean, if you look at guys like Takarius McKinley. Man, he's scheduled right now to make like over $4 million for his 2021. Well, his 2021 AAV is 21 million. Or I'm sorry, it's 4.2 million. And I think they had him listed for a little bit of a pay increase. He hasn't really produced since his early time in Atlanta. And it's like, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like that one scares me. But I'm going to go into my 2.
Sure.
So my 2 was Anthony Barr. I don't think is going to be allowed to leave Minnesota personally. I think they're going to figure it out. I think he's entirely too essential to their defense. And I think it's a layup for the Eagles. I know some of you guys are not, he's 29. He's not only better than our linebacker, he's better than all of our linebackers times 10. Like, to me, it's not even close. I don't think Anthony Barr is going anywhere. I just don't. If I can get Agba, then I don't really need a pass rusher, and I don't know the Eagles are going to be in the market for a pass rusher like that because this is a good draft. But the next guy I would say is an impact guy that might be a little under the radar. Like an Agba could be underneath the radar to some people that, don't know his game. Jayon Brown. I really like Jayon Brown a lot. I think he's a guy that could definitely play. He's not a huge guy. He's that new linebacker, the athletic type. He's really, really good at coverage, and he's just a better version of Eric Wilson. He can actually tackle. Where Eric Wilson couldn't tackle to save his life, and was why I was so adamantly opposed to getting him last year. But I really like Jayon Brown a lot. I think Jayon Brown could be a decent player for the Philadelphia Eagles. And to me, I'm not saying that's a necessity, but, that guy's still floating around and he doesn't go in that first wave of free agency and he doesn't get signed back. And he's another guy, like I said, we're looking at guys from other teams that probably have value to their teams and they might end up getting a deal from them. But, Jayon Brown, if you're telling me that's a $5.3 million deal and the Tennessee Titans are going to let him go, I'm interested. I'm absolutely interested in Jayon Brown.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm glad because I like Tennessee's defense. I watched some of their games. He's one guy I didn't really notice, but I'm going to definitely take a closer look. So I think based on what you're telling me, he could be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So who's your number 2?
So I'm taking another look at my list. I'm taking another look at these players. And my number 2, this is a scheme fit thing, and I want to talk about this guy because it could be totally wrong. Mark Lewinsky. Is he any good? Is he, because we I don't know how much we need it, but bringing another guard in there, I don't know if he's a swing guard. I don't know. I didn't do a lot of research on him.
I don't know a ton of what he is as a player. I'd have to see film on him. I like the fact that you're sticking to the offensive line just because offensive line is something that is very much valued here. And this team will always kind of stick around and look for guys. I see where you're going. He's an Indianapolis guy. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know what he is as a player. He is a veteran guy, he's been around a little while. But yeah, I'm really, I don't know what he is as a player fully. I haven't watched a ton of film of him, but I see where you're going. Indianapolis guy, veteran guard. This team loves guards. It loves offensive linemen. We don't know that, Nate Herbie's going to be back because he's a younger guy. And unless the Eagles, put that tender on him and basically make him, where he's a restricted. So he has to negotiate with the Eagles pretty much, exclusive rights, essentially. So unless they do that to him, he's probably going to have a ton of interest from other teams. And they're probably going to be able to offer potentially a starting job to where the Eagles, he's gotten a lot of playing time here, but it's not because he's been named the starter per se. I don't hate that one. I'll give you my third one.
Sure.
So I've tried to target defensive end or defensive lineman. I'm okay with defensive tackles, guys, linebacker. I don't hate the suggestion you made there, Jalen, about, bringing in KJ Wright. KJ Wright's a very good football player. And although I don't know his familiarity with the scheme, I would, the way I said I would bank on Ugba for the potential player that he can be, no matter the scheme. I just think he's a good football player. KJ Wright's kind of the same way. He's just a really good football player. I don't hate that one at all. But I'm going to go with a need for a big wide receiver, a guy that can win and can get you catches, but isn't so spectacular that he's going to cost you a ton of money. I'm going Mike Williams, wide receiver.
Nice. He's my next one. He's my next one as well, for the exact same reason. He's got that big body. He's a proven producer, less than 5 million, and he's still only 27. And the guys all know him from the Chargers days. I think it's a really good fit. For me, Williams and Barr are the two that really pop for me.
Sure. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, I like the suggestion of KJ Wright as well. That's not someone that I'm opposed to. I like KJ Wright a lot. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, just given the familiarity that Anthony Barr has with the system we're running and the fact that, yes, he's 29, but he's still got 3 years of football that, he could play. And he's a massive upgrade over what we got on, he's by far the best linebacker we're going to have in this city in quite some time if he gets here. Now, like I said, guys, my gut instinct is he's not making it here. It's very, very, very unlikely he's going to make it here. But my fourth guy, I wanted to look at interior linemen and just, I know that defensive linemen, I know it's a stretch because they cost money. They cost a lot of money. And you got to kind of have to play the market and try to find somebody that maybe hasn't been utilized right, that maybe you just feels a good scheme fit here. And there's two guys that kind of jumped to my mind when I looked at this. So I'm not saying either one of these guys are going to amount to anything, but Malik Collins, defensive tackle that's playing down there in Houston. And then the other guy that jumped off the page to me because I thought the value made some sense here, but he's an expensive guy, is Vernon Butler, defensive tackle, Buffalo. Neither one of them are necessarily known scheme fits. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I would argue that, you have to be kind of careful to scheme fit with these guys, especially when you talk about a guy like Malik Collins coming out of Houston. I'm not overly certain that's a scheme fit, but I'd have to really take a look at Houston's scheme to get a good feel for what they run and how he would fit here. It's also hard to pin down what Gannon is. Like I thought, judging early from the season, he's kind of an even split between two gapping and one gapping. He asks his guys to two gap a lot more than what we're used to seeing.
Sure.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
So I did some research today and this week. I'm not super familiar with either of these players. I know that they're not, slam dunk scheme fits, which make me comfortable. I think this is part of what I would do, and I think part of what you would do. And I think this is also anticipating to some degree what Howie would do and what Shane and JG and Sirianni would want them to do. I think with free agency, a lot of it is about relationships. And obviously, scheme fit and familiarity teams and players and coaches is there. But I'm very driven towards people they've likely worked with in the past for various reasons.
Sure.
I'm not super familiar with Vernon Butler's scheme. I mean, I've obviously heard of him, and Malik Collins as well. I'm curious if people in the chat want to help me out because I haven't seen a lot, so I don't know. I don't have anything meaningful to say. I mean, they're defensive tackles. We could definitely use the depth at DT. They're definitely positions of value. I wouldn't call them positions of need. And honestly, I don't know. I'd love to hear from the chat what you think of those guys because maybe they should be on my list. They're not.
Neither is super productive. You're not getting like a ton of productivity from these guys.
Sure.
But what you are getting with like a guy like Vernon Butler in particular, you're getting a guy that has the frame. He's got the frame to play nose. And, he can play 3-tech. He's played some 34s and outside defensive end, 5 technique and like kind of almost a 34 type front before. So, I mean, he's got some versatility to his game. I'm just a little concerned about the what they're calling the average value for him at like over $7 million. Seems a little high for what he is. Right. I'm banking it's not going to be that high.
Okay.
That's honestly, I'm banking he's not going to get paid that much.
Sure.
I don't know if that's true. You can never tell, but he's the guy. Vernon Butler, I know a little bit more about. I've seen him play because he played in Carolina for a little while. He's a Louisiana Tech guy, by the way. There's always that nice connection back, but
for sure,
it's hard to predict how some of these guys would absolutely fit here. And like I said, how much money are you going to pay to a backup? Especially when you get a guy like Hassan Ridgeway for a lot less. But I'm just looking at trying to fill out my roster, and like I said, I don't think Vernon Butler is getting $7.5 million. I'm not exactly sure why they had his contract value that high, but perhaps I'm missing something. I don't know. What you probably will remember about Malik Collins is he played in Dallas.
Okay. I guess I should remember that. I guess I should remember him, but for whatever reason, it's just not ringing a bell. I don't know why. I remember a lot of people play for Dallas.
Just rotational. Yeah, they're just rotational pieces. Like they're not.
Yeah.
Neither one of those guys are special. Neither one of those guys should really be paid heavily.
Right.
My thing is that if I can't get Hassan Ridgeway back in the door because someone either jumps all over him on the contract or he just doesn't like what we present to him and he wants a better opportunity, then I'd probably go after one of those two players. Like that,
Okay.
At least that caliber or level of player.
Right. I like that. That makes sense.
So who is your fourth?
Okay, so this guy I know, I've seen him on TV. I haven't studied his film. I don't know all of his stats. This dude can play. I'm pretty sure all the coaches like him already. Mo Alley-Cox. Like that dude. It's not a position of need. And you want to get Goddard all the reps you can, especially after you pay the man. But 12 personnel where you get two viable receiving threats, that could be pretty nice. Okay, so I love Ertz. Help us win the Super Bowl. Great guy. He moved on. Probably the best fit for both teams. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. It would be really cool if we could get Mo Alley-Cox for $3.3 million or less. Shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hate that. I mean, and that's the thing is like, you try to value surf once you get down, once you get down this far into who you're trying to project in. And that's what gets tough because like I'm trying to project to like salaries and keep in mind what the Eagles could potentially afford. And at the same time, try to get quality players that can play a role while not strapping us for the draft because we have a ton of draft capital. And I would very much like to see the Eagles use that draft capital. But I agree with you. There are certain position groups like safety and some other like where you're probably more likely to spend the money in free agency than you are to spend a lot of draft capital, to be quite honest.
One thing we could do, and I don't know how you want to do this from a schedule perspective, there are some, Marcus Williams, Marcus Maye, they're both pretty good from what I remember. Marcus Williams especially. And just looking at the chart here, Keanu Neal, Justin Burris. I don't know these guys very well at all. And whether you want to talk about them now, next week, or next month, this doesn't have to be a one-off or a two-off. We probably should pull them, but I think there's a reason neither one of us mentioned the safety yet. I don't think they're not necessarily good enough to – yes, we have a need, but we also want to have value. And I don't know that those players are all that valuable for the most part. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's just not a lot there. It's not that I don't want to pull a safety. It's just I legitimately can't find anyone worth paying the money on the list.
Right.
I mean, you'd have to find value. And I don't have enough info in hand this moment, guys. I mean, we're going to do a lot more studying and we're going to do a lot more content, both written and video form on these prospects. But some of these guys, man, I don't have a real good feel for what they were for their teams. If Kareem Jackson was 5 years younger, safety from Denver, I'd be all in on it. He's not 5 years younger. I like Quandre Diggs from Seattle, but he'll be pretty much 29. And, you're looking at, $6.2 million. So like Quandre Diggs is probably better than Anthony Harris. Probably can make an argument that he's at this point in Rodney McLeod's career, he's better than him, but is he worth $6.2 million on an average, salary as opposed to the probably $2 or $3 million you'd pay the other guys.
Right.
So is he worth double the value? You know what I mean? Like that's the struggle I have. But in saying that, have you said your fourth? You said your fourth, right?
I did, yes.
Okay. I'll go with my fifth. And this is one where I did too. Because I don't know how it's going to lay out. And I already named one of them, which is I could see the Eagles if Quandre Diggs' price comes down, which I don't think it will because I think there'll be teams interested because of how light the safety market is. I could see Quandre Diggs. I mean, it's a guy that maybe you can get for $5 million or less. I do think he's an upgrade over Anthony Harris and over Rodney McLeod.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know that I'd say he's an impact player, but he's certainly an improvement. You know what I mean? He's a box
Mhm.
guy. He can play in the box. So he
Right.
can be a box safety for you. But he's my 1A. My
Sure.
1B is to go in the opposite direction and go outside. So say we don't get Steven Nelson re-signed back. I went with JC Jackson,
Okay.
my
I like
1B.
that. Yeah. I
So what are
like
your
that.
thoughts on those two guys in particular?
I like those guys. I had them highlighted, but in a different color. I'm editing it now. I know you've got the older version up, which is good. I like that. So you said Diggs is more of a strong safety. Is he versatile, or is he just more of a box guy?
There's some versatility to what he can do, but I think that, in my opinion, he's a little bit more of a box safety than he is a
Sure.
free. But I mean, it's not like he can't do both.
Right. No, no, of course. It's value. It's like you said, value versus need.
Mm-hmm.
Harris is a box safety. McLeod is a box safety. We have so many people that could be box safeties. Kayvon Wallace is probably a box safety. And
Yeah.
so there is a need there to improve, but he'd have to go way lower than 6.2. I agree with you. There's value there. I just don't know if there's enough value to pull the trigger again. We'll see what happens. But I do like the
Mm-hmm.
pick. I think he's a good player. And then
Sure.
I haven't watched a bunch of JC Jackson. I haven't watched a bunch of Patriots, but I've heard of the guy. I've heard he's really good. And at 3.3, he's definitely worth taking a look at. I'm
Yeah.
curious. This goes back to what I was saying before, and I might be wrong about this. At a given time, I like to have a rookie and a vet or two in the same position group, in the same position room at the same time. I don't want to have a whole bunch of vets. I don't want to have a whole bunch of rookies. I'd
Sure.
like to keep Darius Slay for a little while longer. I don't want to replace him next year. And it's not like me being emotional or he's just a great player, and so I could see bringing in a JC Jackson. I think he's a quality enough player, especially 3.3. But I want Slay to leave the room. And while I'm not necessarily worried about JC Jackson, I like the idea of bringing rookies in the next couple seasons. If it's the right free agent, maybe. But I really like Slay leading that room. I think he's a great. I really like our leadership on this team. That's what gets me excited about the playoffs and maybe making a real impact this year. A 1-year turnaround. I mean, that's I'll give Sirianni some credit. One season.
Sure.
I mean, that's impressive. And nobody expected it, really, especially not the big media people. But yeah, so I want Slay to lead the room. I want Slay to have a year or two more, maybe 3, and I really want to focus on the draft for corners.
Uh-huh.
The draft is very good for corners usually, not always, but usually.
Yeah, and Quandre Diggs is he's an interesting one. So, he's built a little bit more like a nickel or a box safety. But to
Mm-hmm.
be quite honest, the last 2 years, I'm looking over his actual snap counts and looking
Sure.
at his snaps by position. He's played more free over the last 2 years. So there is some versatility to where he's built like a nickel or a strong, but
Okay.
it looks like he has the athleticism to play over the top as a roving free. So,
Sure.
that to me, if you trust Marcus Epps in the role of maybe, playing him as a free or putting him, if you trust those two together, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I've got big hopes for Marcus Epps the rest of the season and the next season. I think he's got a potential to be exactly what Gannon needs for a scheme, assuming he's still here. Someone that can be versatile and buzz down and cover 3 and be a post safety when he needs to be. I think that's pretty perfect, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, guys. I mean, I know there's a lot of guys on here that we're talking about that, we can't predict if their teams are going to be able to or not. It just depends upon the price and if negotiations break down. I mean, go back and you look what happened to us at the safety position a couple of years ago, to where I don't want to name the person. Let's just say Malcolm Jenkins signed for lesser money than when he was
Yeah.
being offered in Philly, and it was
Mm-hmm.
because of a breakdown in the talks. So I mean, it's hard to say, but yeah, I agree, guys. I agree. And yes, Paul, that's what I was just alluding to, is that he's actually played a little bit more free safety over the past 2 years, although he's built a little bit more like you would expect to see from a box. Um, Yeah, I guess we can get to the chat, guys. Fill in. Who are your? I'm interested, chat. You've seen some of the players. If you want to go to Spotrac. I'll give you the exact link, guys. Go to Spotrac, SPOTRAC.com/NFL/free FREE. Tack mark agents AGENTS. Sorry, guys. /all/ well, then just put /all because then it goes in like cornerbacks, whatever. Just go to all, and you guys can see some of them in there if you need a second to look over who is actually available. There are a ton of free agents, so it is kind of difficult to categorize them all. We understand, trust me. We just went through that. So I'm interested. Who are the 5 that some of you guys would sign? And there's a few comments in here I really agree with, like Jazz Fusion. Sign what they don't value. Linebacker and safety plus an X receiver. I think they value the receiver. They just can't find the guy.
Yeah, the draft said they value the receiver, but Howie can't choose receivers for crap. I don't know why.
Yeah.
He understands
no
the team
doubt, no doubt.
He chooses the wrong guy over and over.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you, Michael. This is a good one here, right here. Paul said 3 players I believe the Eagles target in free agency: defensive end / edge Hassan Reddick, wide receiver. We went the same way with Mike Williams, and then cornerback Dante Jackson or J.C. Jackson. So we actually had a couple players in common. Paul.
Yeah.
Richie doesn't feel comfortable with Anthony Barr because of how many snaps he's played throughout his career.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that perspective, Richie. I still think he's got tread left, but I definitely get what you're saying that, he's playing linebacker. So it's like the inverse, not really the inverse, but it's like, it's the running back position of the defense. Instead of signing Barr, I would much rather go KJ Wright. I hear you, Jay. I don't hate KJ Wright. I mean, I would be more than happy with KJ Wright being signed. More than happy. Packers linebacker Campbell, is that Devondre Campbell, I think, is a sleeper free agent target I would pursue. Well, he was big news a couple of years ago didn't he leave Atlanta? Anthony Barr is 29 years old with his best days behind him. Don't pursue him at all. Even with his best days behind him, though, Paul, he's just such an upgrade over what we have on the roster. Barr got to be a proven locker room leader for me. If he has a losing streak, Barr is not going to speak up, then no thanks. Well, Richie, I don't know, man. I don't know what he is in terms of the locker room. I don't really follow the Vikings like that, so I can't really say. Paul said that his positions of need would be an edge rusher, an outside linebacker, safety, outside wide receiver, and another outside big target wide receiver. He wants some talent in that receiver room.
For sure.
Anthony said, Richie said, my bad, Richie. Richie said Anthony Barr's best play was when he injured Aaron Rodgers. I cannot remember any big time plays by Barr in the playoffs. I don't really follow the Vikings like that in terms of the playoffs, but I know that Anthony Barr does make big plays. He's very integral to their scheme. Natiro said we can barely involve Smith with our offense. Another wide receiver would be funny. We need to get guys that are separating, though, too, Natiro, just outside of 2 guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. They need to be in the right spot, in the right position to judge that. Who else in the chat thinks Sauce Gardner increased his draft stock yesterday? Well, last time I saw they had him rated as a top 10 pick, which is not what I want to see NFC East Beast, because I'd like to see him hanging around the mid-teens in value. Jalen said, one thing I think this team is lacking for a coaching point of view is playing experience. I'm not saying because most of the coaches didn't play in the NFL, they can't coach, but they don't know what they don't know. Maybe. I mean, you got guys like Denard Wilson, and stuff that played in the league. Paul said, and another physical outside cornerback in the draft and a true center to replace Kelsey. Jalen said, the reason why I said bring in KJ Wright, I like KJ Wright. He's a really good football player. Yes, both the Fuller brothers went to Virginia Tech. Yeah, I thought so too. I'm also aware Moorhead has experience. Kind of. He played a couple of years in the league. He didn't really have a big role, but he did play a couple of years in the league. Trace McKinley has been a bust in the NFL. Yeah, he has. He's never really proven what he was thought to be at one point. But, it's tough, man. Sometimes guys just need a change of scenery in the right situation. But it's hard to bank on that when you don't have one-on-one interviews with the guy. I can only judge the film he's put out there. And the film he's put out there is like, I probably wouldn't take a chance at the price value they're saying. So, who knows? You guys don't like Michael Thomas? You think he's too much of a me guy? They said he's a Dallas Cowboy type player. Most good receivers have a little bit of that diva stuff, though, Richie, to be quite honest. What's up, Dave Dust? How you doing, buddy? Happy New Year to you too, sir. Any team can lose any week. Good luck to y'all. It better not be this week, Lucio. Jazz Fusion said Nebraska guy, I think, saw him in college and thought he had some ability, but an inconsistent motor. Jalen said, I'd be all in on, of course it went back down as I read it, on Marcus Williams, but we can't afford it. Yeah, that's kind of the problem is I don't know exactly where our cap's going to fall yet. We still got some decisions to make to see how much cap space is going to be available and what we can get guys on. What's up, Kurt Monroe? How you doing, buddy? We appreciate you tuning in, man. You're nervous about the upcoming game? Never can bank on anything. That's what I said, earlier in one of my videos, guys, is that we got to stop assuming we're winning anything with just how unpredictable the nature of the season is, because at any moment up until game time when they finally stop testing, a guy can be out of the game. That's all I'm going to say. Legend Killer 5 said, yeah, bring in JC Jackson, but you draft another corner, a lengthy corner. Yeah, I would still keep drafting because you still need a lot of youth in that secondary. You got some young guys, but I just don't know how they feel about them. I think they're just kind of throwing darts at the board, seeing if any of them stick.
Yeah.
Paul, I agree with what you're saying is that they actually, when they signed and brought in Quandre Diggs, he was playing more as the free for Seattle while they were using Jamal Adams in the box. Because Jamal Adams is very much a box safety. Jazz said, just listening. Appreciate you, man. Legend Killer 5 said, I think one of the cornerbacks we have in-house could be a free safety, McPherson or Tag Allen, or they could play in a certain scheme and be brought in certain zones where they can flourish. I remember there being some buzz about one of the guys that we traded for not too long ago. Let me pull up the Eagles roster. We traded for him. He played it, I want to say, down at LSU. I know there was a ton of buzz around him having versatility to play nickel, outside cornerback, in both safety positions. We definitely need safeties. That's the thing. If you can get a young guy and you can convert him, I think McPherson is pretty dead set though on playing outside. I think that's the issue we're going to run into is that McPherson sees himself as an outside corner. So probably take some convincing from the coaching staff to move him. I'm not saying he wouldn't do it. I'm just it's kind of the way he says things. Sorry, guys. I'm looking through. I want to see who that corner was. It's not Avante. Avante could do it. I mean, he's had experience doing it, but obviously we need Avante in the slot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not Josiah Scott. I don't know Josiah Scott if he could do it or not. I heard he has that kind of versatility as well, but Kerry Vincent Jr. is what I was thinking about, guys. Yeah. There was definitely some buzz about Kerry Vincent Jr. potentially playing that role as being a guy that you could move between outside corner, nickel corner, and into safety. So, he might be a guy that they really want to throw some darts at the board during training camp next year and just kind of see if they can't find anything. Yeah. Paul said that they could bring in Jacoby Stevens off the practice squad next year to play the role of strong safety. I wonder what's going on with him, though, Paul, because remember, they were trying to work him out, I think, at like Sam linebacker. So I'm not too sure what they've done there. I mean, I definitely think he can play a roving role. So if you're going like big nickel, he definitely could fit what you need there. He can come down and definitely play the box for you. Yeah, I don't dislike McPherson. I think McPherson just needs to get a little bit more nuance with the eye discipline aspects of the game. But he's definitely a guy that I think has played pretty well in his opportunities and his snaps. Definitely. I'm a fan of what I've seen from him. So you guys talking a little bit back and forth. Goodwin, get him on the cheap ACL. Yeah, we'll see how his value is affected by that, guys. I really don't know how it's going to affect him. What's up, Eagles Realist? He said, what do you think about Godwin? And if you could choose, would you get Barr or a top linebacker out of the draft? If it was my choice personally, Eagles Realist, I'd probably go for the younger guy in the draft. I just know how this organization works, though. You know what I mean? They seem to be funny about that type of thing, to be quite honest, when it comes to that position. The problem with Godwin is that, you know, he's valued at $14 million per season is where they have his value at. But he's coming off of a pretty serious knee injury, so I don't know if that's going to devalue the value. So we'll have to see. Dave Duss said, just give me a real linebacker and an edge rusher, and he'll be good. Yeah, guys. I mean, I think we need an next receiver. Like I said, guys, I have safety, Sam linebacker, a Mike linebacker, or an outside linebacker. You can play either, really, but Sam is an outside linebacker, honestly. And then your X wide receiver are my positions of need. Man, this was a long one, guys. We appreciate y'all so much for tuning in on the free agency special. We're going to have to do this again, Allie. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Because I think that Quandre Diggs, I think there's some guys that, you know, require a little bit more study.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think? Do you want to start making a shift or a change towards the draft and start talking about the draft?
We definitely need to ask the chat. I think we should start talking about the draft. I don't know if we could do it in kind of a staggered way because free agency is going to be a thing for a while. The draft is going to be a thing for a while. Sure. And I think it would be really good to take a look at the draft, a preliminary look next week, just to have that first conversation between you, me, and the chat. And then as things happen, as things, you know, matriculate and change, we can certainly take deeper dives in certain free agents, certain deeper dives into certain draft prospects, for example. I think that's probably the way to handle it. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm okay with that. We can ask the chat what they want to go with. I mean, we can also deep dive on independent position groups. So if you guys want to do a deeper dive on receivers, if you guys want us to really break down the receiving options, try to get deeper into, we can really break down the contracts if you want. From a valuation standpoint, we can get into all that. So if you guys want us to break down, stick with free agency until we get a little bit closer to the draft, you know, one of the things we can focus on is we can go in particular of all the linebackers, the secondary members, you know, extras, whatever you guys want, we can go much deeper. This was a very broad topic today, right? I mean, it was very arching, very, very reaching because we're covering everything pretty much today. So we can deep down further if you guys want. So we could do that, or we can slowly start the process of talking about the draft and like maybe just start off with what we think the Eagles might do in the draft in terms of how they might value it, what they might do with the picks, how many picks they might take. We can start that one, but that one might be a little better, guys, to get into towards the end of January, beginning of February, when there's a little bit more definitive information out there.
Yeah, but, to be fair, I mean, Sam Howell just declared today. Yeah. So we will have a better idea. Well, we can do it as soon as next week, but we'll have a better idea next month.
Sure. And with that said, guys, we will do a community poll. We will get your thoughts on where you guys want to go with the next topic. Yeah, this is gonna be fun, guys. This is gonna be real fun. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Allie, thank you. I really appreciate it. You put in a ton of work on this.
My pleasure. It was fun.
Everyone in the chat. At one point, I looked up and we were at like 70. That's a lot of people. We appreciate y'all for real. Like, it's really fun to kind of engage back and forth with you guys. Me to really like Anthony Barr, and the rest of the chat to really hate Anthony Barr. I appreciate it, guys. It always makes for interesting conversation. It kind of sucks if we all just agree.
For sure.
You know, this is all just we're throwing stuff at the board, guys. I mean, no one really knows. You know, once I start seeing more definitive leanings towards the Eagles, I'll really get into the film of the guys they're looking at, and I'll give you guys true evaluations on what they're good at, what they're bad at, and whether or not I would even go near them with, you know, a 10-foot pole, if you will. But yeah, we'll get to that, guys. We'll definitely get to that. If I can ask y'all one big favor before we get out of here, if you guys can, on your way out, if you haven't hit the like button, if you can hit the like button, we'd appreciate it a whole lot. And with that said, guys, we'll see y'all on the next live stream. Remember, I'll be back Monday live stream. I'll be back tomorrow live streaming for the pregame. But Monday through Thursday, remember, 9:05 a.m. We're going to be talking. I'd love to have you guys there. All right, y'all. Appreciate y'all. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye, everybody. Now the awkward part of waiting for it to end, guys.